Hi guys, welcome back to Art with Miss Karen. Today's our very first video in this new series, Art Basics. Today we're going to talk about sketching. So some of the things you're going to need, first of all, a sketchbook. You could also just use paper if you have paper laying around the house, but I use a Strathmore Sketchbook. It's really reliable, it has good quality paper, and it's very sturdy, so it's not going to fall apart on you. If you don't have a big sketchbook, you could just use a regular book laying around the house, like a smaller sketchbook. It's really handy to take with you, and it's a good small size if you prefer something like that. For the pencils that I'm going to use in this video, I have these ones, and I'm going to give you a little bit more details about them a little bit later. If you don't have a set of sketching pencils, a regular pencil is going to work just fine. I understand that you can't always go out and find supplies, so whatever you have, let's get to it, and that's what we're going to use today. Alright, so today we're going to use the Derwent Graphite Pencil set. There's 12 in this set, and I like this one because it has all the way from 6B to 4H. So let's start with 6B. So 6B is going to be a softer pencil. It's going to have a darker shade, and 4H is going to be the lightest shade, and it's a hard pencil. It's going to make marks on your paper if you're not careful, so be careful with that. In the middle we have HB, B, and B2. This is the range that's going to be your mid-tones. So when we do shading, those are the pencils you're going to want to use that are in between the darker and the lighter shades. So feel free to test out all of these pencils. Take time to find one that you really enjoy using and test them all out and see what each of them does, and just try them out from lightest to darkest to see how you can use them in your art. So today we're going to talk about 4 different shading techniques. So you're going to divide your paper into 4 sections so that you can see each technique as we do it. I'm using the 2B pencil just to lay out the basic shapes and things, but you could use a regular pencil if that's what you have as well. I'm going to start off with hatching. Hatching is when you use lines next to each other to show how something can get lighter or darker. So as I make darker marks, the lines are going to be closer together, and as I want my shading to be lighter, the lines are farther away from each other, and that's hatching. Another technique is cross-hatching. Cross-hatching is actually my favorite technique to use, and this is where the lines cross over each other. So when you have a darker area, the lines are going to cross closer together, and as it becomes lighter, the lines are farther away from each other. Stippling is another technique that's used with dots. So when the dots are close together, it's going to create a darker, and we're using the 6B pencil to show the darker areas, and a 6B pencil is softer, so it's going to let us make all of those dots really easily. Because if we used a H pencil, it would be hard and it would mark our page up too much. So a 6B or B range pencil is best for stippling. And as you can see, I'm just making all of these little dots to create the shading. And the last technique we're going to talk about is blending. And this is the one that people are probably most familiar with. It's literally just using the side of your pencil to smoothly make that gradient. So I'm going to start with the dark area and work my way into a lighter shade. And I'm going to switch over and use the 6B pencil. And I'm just going to use a side of it to create and blend those shades together. The next thing we're going to do is draw an object for each box. We're going to use the same object in each box so that you can see and use the different shading techniques with each object. So the object that I'm drawing is a mug. There's a mug sitting close by, and I'm just using my observation skills to draw it. And so I'm using just light strokes to sketch out the basic shapes. Don't feel like you have to make it perfect. This is just practice. You don't have to make this a very perfect sketch. So I'm drawing out my mug, and we're going to start with this one, which is blending. So I'm using a 2B pencil to get some of the midtones first. And I'm just going to use the side of it to blend where some of the shadows are. And then down here, we'll go ahead and continue adding some of that shadow. And you just look at your object, and it might help if you add some drastic light on one side of it so you can see where the shadows are really easily if you have a lamp sitting on one side of your object. And so I'm just getting all those midtones in there with my 2B pencil. I'm going to switch over to my other pencil. I'm going to get the 6B and add in some of those darker shades. All right, now we're going to move on over to stippling. So I'm going to sketch out the same object again, my mug, using my loose movements to sketch it out. And it looks like my handle's a little bit too big, but that's okay. This is just practice, so we're just going to mark the lines that we want to keep a little bit darker and keep going. All right, so I've got my 6B pencil because we're doing stippling. We want a softer pencil to make those marks, and I am fast forwarding this video so that we can get through the stippling process a little bit faster. So stippling does take a lot of time because of all of the dots that need to go together. So we see it goes from darker to lighter because of how close the dots are together. And this could be a lot more detailed, but we're gonna end it there for time's sake. So let's move on to hatching. So again, hatching is when the lines are next to each other. You're going to have, when they're close together, they're going to be that darker shade, and when they're farther apart, it's going to be the lighter shade. So let's just put in some lines. It doesn't matter what direction you make your lines, but I want my mug to look circular, and so we're going to make those lines kind of curve around the direction that my ellipses are going, the circles are going. All right, we're going to move on to cross hatching. So remember, when you're sketching, use those loose movements, use your whole arm to create those basic shapes for your object. Cross-hatching is really my favorite form of shading just because it's so easy to just move the lines close together, far apart from each other, and you don't really have to think too much about it. You're just putting the lines in. So I'm going to make it darker by making more lines on top that create a denser form of the cross-hatching. We're just going to fill in the inside of the mug with our shading as well. All right, and there we go. There are 4 techniques for shading: hatching, cross-hatching, stippling, and blending. So go ahead and keep practicing these 4 different shading techniques over the next week, and keep drawing different objects and keep them in a sketchbook so you can keep practicing all of these different techniques. Thanks again for joining Art with Miss Karen. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you would like to share your art, you can go ahead and send it to artwithkaren@gmail.com, and I would love to showcase some of your art at the end of next week's video. So come back next Monday for more Art with Karen.